Welcome to the 617 podcast on the Crowworthy Network, the voice of the Boston fans by the Boston fans. And today, I still am Michael Marcangelo, joined by Hollywood Rayshon Buchanan and Broadway Joe Malkin. And we have a very special guest, fresh off her co-written expose of the New England Patriots season in the Boston Herald last year. Karen Guregian, our best friend of the show. How are you? How have things been recently?
Interesting to say. You write something like that and you're not sure what the reception is going to be, or, but I think for the most part, I think people were, even though a lot of it was kind of known on the surface, I think people were kind of appreciative for context, details, and we were so happy and fortunate at the same time to be able to provide that.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to start off with like a really high level question because we've talked, a few times over the last couple of years and twice this year. And we discussed ad nauseum how it looked bad and how it couldn't really be going this bad. But it's one thing to observe it, right? But I
Right.
wonder, what was your reaction when you were actually hearing from your sources about just how dysfunctional it was, comparatively speaking, to other years covering the New England Patriots?
Well, for people who don't know, but some people do, the Patriots are typically the most buttoned down, tight lipped ship known to man. You can't, I mean, everything that you get for them is kind of the same old thing. And I think there's a huge fear factor, because of how much it's frowned upon to speak to the media, whether you're just saying, hi, have a good day or anything else. I think that players are called on it. I mean, they have people reading the newspapers and they'll bring the newspaper to a meeting and quote somebody's, so-and-so said this, and then they'll make fun of the guy. So uh, it's tough for anyone to say anything without fear of retribution.
So for me, this expose, and it wasn't because of you and what you wrote, but rather the content of it, uh, really just made me. It justified my frustration towards the organization this season, and reading it and kind of, it's interesting because you read some of the things that you say or that you got from your sources, and you try and figure out who it is, and to that end, to what you just said. I wonder if that is still going on around the Patriots clubhouse, if you will, if they're trying to figure out who gave what quotes, because they're they're pretty inconspicuous quotes and things that these guys said. They are.
We tried really hard.
Yeah, and that comes back on you too. So not only does it come back on the players, but it comes back on the media, because we've seen Bill go after people. We've seen Bill go after Burt Breer, and when he, and that's one of his boys. So it's like, it's very interesting to hear and read what you had to say, and then just get frustrated. Like, these guys saw it, they knew it, and they couldn't do anything about it, and it just continued on that tight ship. Like, why was that allowed to continue by the captain, if you will?
Belichick, you mean?
Yes.
Because again, he put it on himself at the start because, again, he wanted to take the blame because he's the one who ultimately made the decision. And I think, when the decision's going foul and, and then ultimately kind of doing nothing about it or to fix it or correct it, or everything you tried to do to fix it or correct it still didn't work. I just think it's a real sensitive subject because Belichick's contention all along for why he did it was he firmly believed if you're if you're a really good coach coaching one side of the football, you can be a really good coach coaching the other side of the football. And he just underestimated what it takes to be a play caller in this league in this day and age, and to run an offense. And then not only run an offense, but completely change the offense and have guys coaching it who had never coached it. I mean, the object was to simplify, right? The object was to get them to play faster. And what ultimately happened is it was far more complex, and they went a ton slower because plays weren't being, didn't get to Mac in time a lot of the time.
Which is, and then for 2 points on what you just said, and then you picking apart the part about Joe Judge, because I think that's what we're doing now, and Matt Patricia is almost being made out, because everybody says Matt's the nicest guy, everybody likes Matt, guys don't really have a problem with him, but they knew that he was in over his head. But with
Right.
Joe Judge, it really does, and you guys said it in your article there, that nobody liked him, or that was what was apparent. And then he's basically disappearing from quarterback meetings. So it's like, what was he really doing, and why was he there? My personal feeling, I just think his time in New York really boosted his ego. I don't know how it could when he failed so terribly.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to hear that. And then from the Max frustration side, and I don't know how you feel about it, and him MFing the coaches, but personally to me, I understand, and people say, well, Brady could get away with it because he was a 6-time Super Bowl champion. Well, Mac Jones isn't some, 7th round quarterback who played at a small program who doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, you even said it in there as well, that he was teaching Joe Judge the offense. So when he's getting 3 to 4 voices in the headset before every play, that would drive me crazy too. I can barely do it with 2 kids, so I can only imagine him doing it with 4 coaches in his ear at once. So just him getting as frustrated as he did, to me, what you wrote vindicates to me how he felt and his outbursts on the field.
I would say yes and no. I would say absolutely for all the reasons you suggested. And even, I talked to Kurt Warner, say midway through the season, and he had just done this, he watched film of the Patriots offense, and I spoke to him after that, and he said to me, I would go absolutely crazy if I had to be the quarterback in that offense. And the reason was, it was just so simple, and there was no creativity and no imagination. And the best way that I can illustrate that is, most times you might have a play, but you have 4 or 5 options off that play, depending upon what you see from the defense. So you look for option A, option B, C, D, and you go through the quick checklist after what you see. The Patriots simplified things so much that if the first option wasn't there, all they had was a B option. And then when that became obvious to defenses, they were a piece of cake to defend. Now, did they simplify it because it was too hard or for the players, or did they simplify it because it was too hard for coaches who never coached offense?
I think we all know that answer.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
That leads into what I want to get back to, because we've been touching on the leadership, and it was brought up in the article, right? So to me, being a leader is being able to see the forest from the trees, right? So Joe Judge was pissing people off. Matt Patricia, we know to an extent, was pissing people off. So my question is, if they go into next season, because I think DeGuglielmo. I'm saying it wrong, but he's apparently not coming back to BC. So he was the guy that replaced Darius Carnecchia, I think in 2015, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So if the coaching is still like if it's still terrible, right? Do they move quicker next year in your opinion? Because I mean, I know that they dragged their feet all year with this, but if they go into this training camp with the same problems outside of Bill O'Brien, like will they move quicker to help salvage the season?
Well, I think it depends on how much pressure Bob Kraft puts on Bill Belichick. I really think Bill O'Brien coming aboard and their search kind of just being a bunch of guys you really wouldn't think would be offensive coordinators. I think it was Bill O'Brien, period. And I also think them retaining Jerod Mayo was another Kraft move as well. So I think it just depends on how upset the head man gets and how much he's willing to pressure Bill Belichick.
Well, he needs to stay upset, in my opinion. If that's the case. Stay upset, stay mad, like whatever needs to be done. Because once again, for you to miss the playoffs 2 out of 3 times, since Brady left, obviously, it's not like he's coming back to sign. I said we could talk about that later on, but it's just like there's so many things that have gone wrong, and I don't want to turn into the East Coast version of the Cowboys, meaning that what can go wrong will go wrong. I don't want that. Quite frankly, and just someone as a
We
part
call
of
that Bobby's Law
yeah,
around.
he's gonna be mad about that when he hears it, but it's fine. He'll be all right. We still love you, man. But that's just where I'm at. So yeah, so Robert Kraft, if you're hearing this, you may not. That's fine. You should hear it. We have one of your best beat reporters here. Like you need to listen to this. Stay upset, stay angry, and get the job done. Once we talk about do your job for 20 years, do your job and get people in here that are competent and can lead this team back to prominence.
Well, and Karen, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and you just said it, so I'm kind of going back to it, but that does, excuse me, start with a guy like Bill O'Brien, who has been around Mac before. They've both been in a similar offensive system at Alabama. Bill and Josh run similar offenses. From a lot of standpoints, I wouldn't call him Jet Sweep Bill yet, but like we call Josh and have a T-shirt. We should get Karen one of those, Craig. That would be awesome if she wore it in there. So it just, I think it comes back to Bill O'Brien and allowing Bill Belichick to get back to what he does best, and that's be the head coach and oversee the entire team rather than having to babysit the offense. With that said, and we all kind of know it because now it's come out from multiple sources of saying that Matt Patricia may not be back next year because he's no longer free. Well, the Giants are still paying Joe Judge. How in the Patriots' right mind can they keep a guy like Joe Judge? Because at least with the offense, because Bill already saw it happen, and I don't think Bill O'Brien, who I hate to use the phrase because I hate the phrase overall. Bill O'Brien is the alpha male of that offense now. Immediately, the moment he signed that contract, he's the alpha male. He's not going to put up with Joe Judge's nonsense. So how can you rightfully keep a guy on the staff like that? Because to me, Jerod Mayo is a Kraft move. Joe Judge is a Belichick move, and it might be a trade-off that we have to deal with.
Right. Well, I'm really interested to see where exactly Joe Judge winds up. I mean, logically, you would put him back to special teams where he's had success. And Cam McCord hasn't quite distinguished himself.
He's almost as brutal to watch on the sideline as Patricia.
No, that would be logical. But again, I don't know this for a fact, but certain reports have come out that said that might not necessarily happen. My biggest fear would be, Nick Cayley's contract is up as a tight ends coach. And obviously he's been interviewing around for offensive coordinator jobs. If he leaves or they don't re-sign him,
oh no,
there's an opening for a tight ends coach.
Oh, no.
And boy, would that stink.
Yeah.
Again, just based on some of the discussions Andrew and I have had with people, Joe Judge is just
With people, Karen.
He's overbearing. And he oversteps, and he tries to
be built.
exercise his authority. And it would be one thing if what he was saying or teaching was correct, but our information was that coaches had to go say, don't listen to that. That's not right. So I don't know. And even Bill Belichick got a little frustrated with him as well. So again, a big curiosity to see exactly where Joe Judge is placed.
So why does he have to be here?
Two questions.
Mike, if the Giants are paying him, why does he even have to be here?
Well, he's a free coach.
I'm a free coach. I'll go coach the tight ends.
Coach. So again, it was actually Greg Bedard actually thought that having that article come out was like, for everyone who thought that it would probably mean that Joe Judge and Matt Patricia would get booted out, Greg Bedard reasoned that no, it would just get Bill Belichick's dander up, and he would just keep Joe Judge to what finger to everybody.
So, you brought up something about how even during the season, Bill Belichick had to step in, and the other coaches were telling players not to listen to Joe Judge. Can you, because you've heard what we've thought about this.
Yeah.
In your experience covering the Patriots, can you please tell me why that particular individual was still on the staff at the end of the year?
Joe Judge?
Yes.
Because he's a friend of Bill.
It's that plain and simple. You think that?
Well, I think Matt Patricia and Joe Judge are friends of Bill. And he, at this point in his career, he wants to be surrounded with people he's comfortable with, who aren't going to talk back to him, that's not the right way, aren't going to challenge him or his decisions, and are basically going to be yes men. Because Bill's 70, whatever he is, and it's his way, and that's all he wants.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this moment, if you want to be cuddle and be friendly, go cuddle with Nike. Go, and that's what it really is. Go cuddle with Nike. It's a beautiful dog. Nike was already making decisions after draft a few years ago. Go cuddle with Nike and leave and get us out of our misery if that's the case. Being surrounded by yes men gets you nowhere in life. We know this, whether it's football, whether it's life, like it's just that's wild to me. And I get your perspective because you're in the trenches with them, so to speak. But that blows my mind that because we're besties, I can sit here and be on the football field and not only waste your career, but waste the career of 53 men on that field that put their blood, their sweat, their tears into week in and week out preparation. That's wild to me. Get people in here that can actually coach and coach these guys up right, whether it be from the neck up, whether it be with technique, do something. But to have your buddies in there, like say your besties in there, because you don't want to be challenged, is a joke. So I just had to get it off my chest, but it's wild.
He's right, because it's a waste of contracts, right, Karen? Like it's a waste of a year of guys. You can't call it eligibility because it's not, college, but like it's a waste of a guy's career, a year of a guy's career. It's a waste of a contract here. I mean, a lot of these guys that they signed to these 3-4 year contracts back in 2020 and 2021 are now coming up, and we're watching Matthew Judon rip through offenses and can't go downfield and score points. We're relying on Marcus Jones, who's an outstanding athlete, to score touchdowns and last second punt returns against the Jets to win games. It's just, I share Ray's frustrations. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, again, when it became clear who was going to run the offense, it made sense to nobody. But again, how dare you challenge a guy who's won 6 rings?
What have you done for me lately? This is how I feel about John Henry. Win me another one then.
What's that?
Win me another one then.
Right.
So Just compete.
I think when you're Belichick, again, put yourself in his shoes. Although that's real hard. And
Small feet.
so you win 6 championships. You've been to 8. You came in with 2. You have all this winning, or history of winning, Tom Brady excluded. And you should feel, if you were him, you would think that you have the right to make your own decisions. That you have the right to run things how you want to run things. And that's where the push and pull comes in, I think.
But I think to add on to that, right? So, and there's truth to what.
Oh, and one other thing, he doesn't care what anybody. He doesn't care what anybody.
Right. Right. No, of course.
He doesn't care what you think, I think, or whatever. He might care what Robert Kraft thinks because that's his boss.
Oh, right. Right. No, that's
but he's not making moves to please you and me and the Patriot fans. He's making moves again that suit him, and by suiting him, he thinks putting the team in the best position to win. That's what he'll tell you, but that's just how it is.
Well, we're a long way away from the TEAM as in team presser from 20-some odd years ago. We're a long way from that. Like he may say that's what it is, but we're so far removed from that presser and what he felt, and that we were on the verge of something. But to your point about just his pedigree, right? So obviously what he did in New York, and obviously he's been coaching since the mid-70s. But as the head coach, right? As the head coach, when he was in Cleveland, they only went to the postseason one time. I mean, yes, they beat the Patriots in the playoffs. Yes, the Mets, he beat the Mets. So okay, fine. It's not like the track record was phenomenal coming into New England. And signing his name on a piece of paper for Robert Kraft. Like there's always room for improvement. So yes, you won, but as Joe just mentioned, it's a "what have you done for me lately" type play. And once again, without 12 in your locker room to kind of make up for things that you were insufficient in, it's starting to rear its ugly head again. And once again, there's no Vinny Testaverde, there's no Bernie Kosar, there's not any of those guys coming through the door for New England at this time.
But the issue here is, it doesn't matter what we think; it matters what Robert Kraft thinks.
Yes, true.
And he's put out these not so subtle hints in the past few years of, we haven't won a playoff game since Brady left, and does not make him happy. He talked about poor drafting a few years back, which didn't make him happy. And things kind of changed with kind of how the draft room was run. And now, again, I think Kraft had some leverage to be able to get O'Brien in there, keep Mayo. And again, I'm not sure what else, if anything else, is happening as yet. But that's the only way to have some action, especially with a head coach who's brought you 6 championships in 2 decades.
Right.
So, if Robert Kraft's brand, if the Patriots brand is impacted by losing or not winning playoff games or not, that is what motivates an owner to act. And he's been doing it, short of telling Bill to hit the bricks.
Quickly on what you just mentioned about we're not sure of other changes coming. I know you said that. I'm going to ask the question anyway. He's now named an offensive coordinator, something he refused to do last year. Again, I believe because he'd have to pay somebody. Are we going to get a defensive coordinator nomenclature this year? Are we in some?
Yeah. Well, that's defensive side wasn't where the problem was. So why was that? And if you made Jerod Mayo happy and avoid giving him a title, meaning, he saw enough advancement in what his role is, and you sweetened his earnings, and he stayed, you're doing good. if he's happy, and again, people say, oh God, if he doesn't get the title, how is he going to get another head coaching job? That's stupid. Why didn't he go on the interview? Well, let me throw this out to you. I'm not going to say he was guaranteed to be the heir to Bill Belichick, but what if he got some assurance to that end game? Why would he need a title?
Right.
Don't we think that's what they did with Josh, though, too?
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's what happened with Josh, because they made Josh the highest paid, and he did have a title, coordinator, to basically get him off the plane going to Indianapolis.
Quite literally, yeah.
And I believe, again, perhaps, I don't think they guaranteed he would succeed, Bill, but I'm sure there were some wink kind of assurances that he would have the first crack at it. But when there's no end in sight for Belichick, Josh wants to be a head coach, and it's like, oh, how long am I going to wait? So he left him.
I got to say, Karen, you usually when you're on the show, like, you talk me off the ledge.
Now you're
but
going
here, I think here, like, you're kind of edging me towards it, because it was just so bad this year. But you mentioned something a couple minutes ago that I want to get your take on. It's kind of a hypothetical question, but you said that Bill thinks that if you're a good coach on defense, you could be a good coach on offense. Do you think he would feel the same way about a good offensive coach being a good defensive coach? Because I think his bread and butter and his baby is defense, and he values it. I think
that's a great question, and it's a great hypothetical. And you would think if Bill was true to what he believed, the answer would be yes. Except, who's going to handle his baby? I mean, I don't know. It's a very interesting question. Well, here's the other part. Would that coach come free?
Right.
No.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of what you have to kind of look at based on the evidence,
Well, and based on some of the evidence we've seen in the past, talking about free coaches. I mean, wasn't McDaniels free for a year when he got back here from Denver and St. Louis? Because he went to St. Louis as a consultant or whatever it was.
Right. I think that might have been the case. Maybe the same thing when he was with the Rams, I believe it was. Was it with the Rams?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that might have been the case, but eventually those contracts run out, and you gotta pay. And they did pay. I mean, he was making $4 or $5 million a year after he left, basically spurned Indianapolis.
That's almost Nelson Aguilar money.
Right.
My other question about the coaches, Karen, just because you've been around it, you've seen it. We all say that, there's free coaches and they're Bill's friends. He did his friends no favors this year, though, right?
Correct. They were hurt worst. Well, I think Mac in the offense, hurt the most.
Right.
But he didn't. I mean, I think Bill was trying to rehabilitate both Patricia and Judge. Again, because those are his buddies, those are his friends. And again, it was just a gross miscalculation, because no one is going to hire either one of those two. Fair enough. And I happen to think, Patricia is not a terrible defensive coordinator, or, Flores came in and kind of did a little better, but I don't think Matt Patricia, I think Matt Patricia's problem was he was very cautious. He didn't want to blitz or whatever, but that doesn't mean he can't run a defense. And I think, again, that's his forte. So I don't think anyone's going to hire him to coach an offensive line or call plays. But if they were to hire him, it would be on the other side of the ball.
Like, if you were going to rehabilitate him, though, right? If you were Bill and you're trying to, I'm going to do my friends a solid. Why would you promote someone who is a defensive mind to coach the offense and the offensive line. Isn't just the offensive line more than enough?
Yes. Yeah. But the way the league is now, the way it's an offense-driven league, and more teams are hiring from the offensive side of the ball as opposed to the defensive side of the ball, with the exception of D'Amico Ryans, who got the Houston Texans job. But mostly people want the offensive guys, the offensive guru, brainchild, those types, because it's an offense-driven league and it's a quarterback-driven league. So you want the guy who's going to get the most out of your quarterback and your offense.
If they were to keep Patricia around, let's just say the Patriots keep him around. Well, based on, again, your tweet today and what's been said about Jerod Mayo and how well he runs the defense and the fact that he was sitting allegedly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but sitting in on the offensive coordinator interviews, where would Patricia fit in if he were to stay on the defensive side?
He wouldn't be, it would not be I do not think it would be in a coaching capacity. There's no room for him on defense. But he would do what he did his first year and basically be senior advisor handling contracts and whatever other, organizational type things that need to be handled. Signing the check, signing the contracts, administrative stuff. But I think Belichick, again, Matt Patricia wants to be a head coach, even though, again, he flopped at it miserably his first time. Well, so did Bill. And again, to kind of resuscitate him, Bill has him doing all these different things that ultimately head coaches are involved in. And now you're seeing it with Jerod, interview process, whatever. I hope he doesn't bounce Jerod to the offensive side. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, this was, like you said, Bill trying to do these guys a solid, only it just completely blew up in his face.
So to add to that, right? I think because I know they interviewed a few people, so I know, and Keenan McCardell, Adrian Clem, who have been here. Is Adrian Clem one that can come back maybe as the offensive line coach, as he already played on the line for Bill here? Like
I think we heard that, I think the Oregon head coach kind of let the cat out of the bag and said there were going to be no changes to the staff. So that would kind of tip you off that Adrian Clem isn't getting a job here. But I will say it's going to be interesting to see what they do about the offensive line coach, because next to the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach is the most important coach on the offense.
Right.
The coordination of the two, I mean, that's why, they had the best at it with Dante Scarnecchia, and there was never an issue about coordination, about knowing which way to go on a certain play or scheme or whatever it was, because they were coached up, and every one hand and the other hand knew what they were doing. It wasn't the case this year. Nobody knew what anyone was doing.
And Mac Jones took the punishment for it.
Right.
Until 2018, it felt like they finally, and you said in your article, like they finally started running play actions and
doing what they used to do that was successful.
Right.
God forbid that happens.
Yeah.
But
broke.
But I think it's important for O'Brien to have a guy to be able to have input on who that offensive line coach hire is. Because again, they have to work hand in hand. They, more than anybody else, have to be on the same page. So we'll see. We'll see what shakes out there.
Overall, I think there's a one way to put this is there's too many, you say there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too many Bills in the kitchen. You have Bill, and then you have Steve, and then you have Patricia, and you have Judge, two guys there on the back end of that so desperately want to be like Bill. And Bill O'Brien even tried it a little bit in Houston and, realized it didn't work. And then I think Cal McNair pissed him off, but I have feelings on Cal McNair that I'll keep to myself for this one. But I think there's too many Bills in the kitchen. There's too many guys that are trying to assert their dominance. And I think that was part of the downfall this year. You had guys that were frustrated. You had Mac who was frustrated, and it just, why not try and change that culture if you can see that it's not working? And like you said, free coach. But when Josh came back, Josh didn't come back in and try and run the show. He was a diligent soldier who took his marching orders. And granted, he had number 12 when he got back, so that's definitely a help. But why, we keep asking the same question, but why keep going down this path, and why keep keeping these guys around? And why not let Bill O'Brien have that freedom to go bring in who he wants on the offensive side of the ball?
He might. Again, we don't know. I want to see who the hire is before I say Bill O'Brien doesn't have sort of a carte blanche. I mean, the Patriots ran their best when Bill just let the offensive guy handle the offense.
Yep.
And
Right.
even I think it was Julian Edelman who said this on an interview. Bill, was split up in too many places, or his focus was so much on trying to make the offense right, because ultimately the two guys he put over there couldn't get the job done. So he was, again, all his attention, or most of his attention, was there, as opposed to making sure the special teams was working, making sure the defense, or planning and plotting to shut down some of these more, the big quarterbacks. He used to be able to do that. He used to be able to foil the better offenses and the better quarterbacks. But if you look at the Patriots' record, they beat teams that they were supposed to beat. They beat the crappy quarterbacks that they faced, second string, third string, rookie, whatever. They couldn't beat Josh Allen. They couldn't beat, Joe Burrow. That's where you need Belichick to that's where his focus should be, not on trying to fix what's broken with the offense.
Right. So, on this show, I think the last time that you were on, Karen, we talked about this because we've all kind of said that maybe Bill's lost his fastball. But I want to pose another hypothetical question to you. If this had gone well, wasn't the reward way better than the risk? Because this is the risk. Like, it doesn't go well, you bring back Billy O, and then you can kind of build it back up. But what if they had done well? Wouldn't this be just another notch in the belt of Bill Belichick to say, I can literally coach anybody?
Right. Or I can even coach coaches. I can coach up the coaches to be something they aren't, But that's where I think his kind of arrogance comes in.
Yeah.
But based on history and past, he was pulling guys off the street and winning Super Bowls after pulling guys off the street, literally. Hank Poteet. He was able to he was able to get by when some of his top players, Ty Law, got hurt. This guy got hurt because, again, he could coach him up, and he could strategize, and he could scheme. Give him one game. That doesn't mean that they could stop somebody for 2 games or 3 games, but for one game, you put Bill Belichick on to map out a defensive strategy. I put my money on him.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can do that now.
right. But again, his plans against, and it wasn't the defensive coordinator's plans, his plan against when he was the Giants defensive coordinator to shut down the K-gun or Buffalo was a master stroke.
Yeah.
His plan to shut down the greatest show on turf the St. Louis Rams and Kurt Warner and those people was brilliant. His plan to shut down the Rams however many years later in 2018, holding McVay's offense to 3 flipping points. Again, we can't forget how good of a defensive mastermind Bill Belichick is. But the problem is that if he has to put out brush fires on the offense, that takes away from what he's able to do to both put his 2 cents in with the defense and his 2 cents in with the special teams.
And we said that a little bit before the season started, that this team on paper is very reminiscent of that 2001 Patriots team. The very good defense with an offense that has a quarterback who can manage the game. We know Mac Jones can manage the game. We saw him do it in his rookie year, and he did it very well. He did it in Buffalo when he threw for 11 yards. You know, he can manage a football.
Well, I think they actually managed him, but that's
well, no, yeah, sure, of course they did. He still had to hand the ball off.
But here's this. But whose strategy do you think that was? Right. Well, again, Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator there, but I'm sure Bill said to him, "We can't have him throw the football. We have to ground and pound, and given the conditions, we have to ground and pound, ground and pound, ground and pound, ground and pound." That's why they won that game.
Right.
Really? Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, Damian Harris, thank you very much.
Right.
It also feels like that is the perfect illustration, though, Karen, of last year, 2021, that Bill he would protect Mac Jones and not make him look good. It felt like the entire year this year, he just hung him out to dry.
Exposed.
So how hard do you think it will be for him to reinstill that trust in Mac Jones this year? Like, if I'm Mac, I've been here 2 years. First year was Josh. It was good. And then what did this guy do to me last year? Like, how do you believe in him?
Well, I think Belichick and Mac Jones' relationship is kind of fascinating. And I do think there's need for a repairing of that relationship. But I think having Bill O'Brien will be hugely significant in both repairing Mac and repairing the relationship. For starters, Mac's going to come in and instead of teach his coaches the offense or what to do, or, come in and have no faith in what these guys are, the bill of goods that Matt Patricia was trying to sell him. He can at least come in and go, "Oh my God, somebody actually understands offense, understands how to call offense, understands a quarterback." So I'm sure it's almost like a relief or a release for Mac Jones that, there's actually a competent guy who's going to, be running the show.
Interestingly enough, though, Mac also taught O'Brien the Alabama offense last time they were together.
But that was different, That was, But now O'Brien's been in it for 2 years. Has a degree in the Patriots offense, and I think he will be able to marry both. Again, for what should always be the objective. Play to the strength of your quarterback. Right?
Right.
It's what they did for Brady. They didn't have him running wing tees or, rolling out. Bootlegs. No, these guys are pocket passers. Their strengths are drop back, or when they get to the line, they know what the play should be, or if the play called is the right play, because they can read defenses like that. And if it's not the right call, they can change the play like that. Okay? That's the strength. Mac has a brain. Mac can get rid of the ball quickly, right? I'm not talking about arm strength. No, I'm just talking about the gifts that he does have. That's what they have to take advantage of. That's what I believe Bill O'Brien will take advantage of.
I personally, I just want to see seam routes brought back into the offense. Joe and I have talked about this endlessly in our group chat. I felt like when obviously Gronk and Hernandez were here, they ran seam routes and then had somewhere run underneath. Like to me, Kendrick Bourne would do dynamic in that type of setting there. So I'm hoping that comes back. And that kind of leads me to a personnel question. So obviously, Jakobi Meyers is one of the guys that's up for free agency. Obviously, we know open market a couple years ago, he gives Nelson Aguilar, 2 years, 26 mil on the table. So just what do you think? How do you think they value Jakobi? And then just what do you think they'll end up offering him if they do offer him at all?
Well, I wrote a few weeks ago that they, within reason, should do their darndest to re-sign him. Because, of all the guys, all the receivers they have, that's Mac's guy. That's his biggie. That's the guy he trusts on third down. That's the guy he goes to most often. And, Jakobi is not in the ilk of an Edelman or an Amendola or Wes Welker, but he still makes plays. He makes plays. He gets open. Again, he's not fast, but he gets open. There's something to be said for getting open. And if at all possible, I would do my darndest to bring him back, but not stop there. You still need that explosive threat. I mean, Devontae Parker thinks he's that guy, but I'm sorry, he's not.
He can't stay on the field. Speaking to the relationship between Meyers and Jones, you could tell how good of a relationship they have when last year, when Meyers caught his first touchdown pass of his career at Gillette from Brian Hoyer, the first guy in the end zone was Mac Jones off the sideline. And going to the bigger picture, is, a lot of people say because Mac is having the outbursts against the coaches that there aren't a lot of guys in his corner. I disagree with that. I think the guys on the offense really like Mac Jones, and I see him always there on the sideline. I mean, he seems to be a favorite of his guys. I mean, is that true?
Yes. Well, I think because of the level of frustration with guys, and again, Mac is a captain. Mac is the leader of the offense, and his outbursts he was almost like speaking for everybody,
Bonding against a common enemy.
Right. But where that became a problem more was with the coaches and the coaching staff. Well, with Bill in particular, because it's almost like Bill took it personally. These were his hand-selected guys, and your quarterback is, throwing his arms up and whining, and, it made Bill look bad because Mac was showing up his guys. And that's where the issues with Mac and Bill are. Mac is like, well, you put me in this spot. And Bill is saying, well, you don't have to show my guys up. So therein lies that problem.
So speaking to that end and guys showing up his guys, Kendrick Bourne, who was done a complete disservice this season. Is there a way that Bill O'Brien can salvage his time here? Because a lot of people, mostly fans, speak very ill of Kendrick Bourne. This guy is dynamic, and they clearly never saw him in San Francisco. I mean, this guy can play the game. He is that Edelman type of guy. And really on the surface, he's actually better than Edelman. And why?
Yeah, well, he's the closest thing to explosive that they have.
Right.
And he made plays in spite of the fact that Patricia had him in a doghouse that he just couldn't get out of. But I almost I don't know this for a fact, but it sort of makes sense. And we alluded to it in what we wrote, that so they're trying to teach the Shanahan McVay type offense. Well, there was a whole bunch of guys, right, including Kendrick Bourne, who had played in that offense. And I am pretty sure would kind of question or say, that's not quite how it worked when we did it here, or that this doesn't quite look like what we did. But with coaches who are out of their element and defensive about it, and Belichick defensive about it, the last thing they wanted was having players kind of discredit them in meetings by just asking simple questions like, well, shouldn't we be doing that instead of that? Because that's how we did it in
in the offense that you're trying to teach us.
Right.
correct.
So
Right.
before we talk about, sorry, Karen,
I was just going to say, it wasn't a good look when many of the players could teach the offense better than the guys who are actually teaching it. That's the point.
Right. Before we talk about the reviews of Brady's farewell tour part 2, you mentioned that they don't have a number 1 wide receiver.
I don't. You?
I wholeheartedly agree. Most of the who is it?
Who is what?
Who can be their next number 1? Now, you've said this a couple times. I know that you might not know this for a fact, but if you have a hunch, who they're going to go after?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. Okay. The first part is obviously that they've been awful in the draft, right? But now you have a pretty good asset in your backyard, Bill O'Brien, who is with Alabama, knows the receivers on Alabama, knows the receivers in the SEC, right? Who are draft eligible. And I would almost kind of say, hey, Bill, which of these draft eligibles can you see in the offense? Maybe we'll draft that person. That's one way I would go about it. And again, it's great for the Patriots because it's a cheap option, right? Right? Cheap. You just have to hit it. Another person I would look, people are talking about Tee Higgins and whatever.
Yes.
I would think, yeah, that's great. I don't see them doing it.
Well, what
You just shattered Rayshawn's whole dreams.
It's that
somebody that I would see. The big thing, what did they do for Joe Burrow? They got him his receiver, right?
Right. In an offensive.
Why don't we look for somebody Mac played with at Alabama? Like, I don't know, Jeudy?
Oh,
Right?
Yep.
Right.
Mike thinks everything's a pipe dream.
All I'm saying is there's kind of logical ways to go about this.
right.
And again, one would be, as I said, use Bill O'Brien's brain, what he saw at Alabama for the past 2 years, playing against the best teams and the best competition, and not only knowing his own personnel, receivers, but knowing the other team's personnel. He's got to have a beat on somebody or a couple of somebodies for them to perhaps draft. That's number 1. Number 2, again, familiarity with Mac. Alabama receivers. You're not going to get the guy in Miami, but maybe you get the guy in Denver.
Speaking of the guy in Denver, because I got another guy, but speaking of the guy in Denver, we know that Denver right now they're rebuilding. They're clearly rebuilding, and they're going to try and rebuild with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. So what would it take to get Jerry Jeudy? besides like a water cooler and a bag of balls. And I'm not saying that's what he's worth. I'm just saying I think Denver would give him away for that.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. Obviously, if Denver knows how desperate the Patriots are, the price goes up. But if they're just shopping him out there, I don't know, whatever the highest bidder is.
And another guy that Billy O might have some familiarity with,
Yeah, right.
that he traded away. Do you think him being hired here lowers the chances of them being able to get DeAndre?
Yeah, maybe. But I'm also looking. I mean, I think DeAndre Hopkins is good, but he's on the wrong side of 30. And
Hey, careful.
I won't even begin to tell you what wrong side of a number that I'm on. But again, if you're again, you have a young quarterback and you want assets that are going to be around, and how many years are you going to get out of DeAndre Hopkins? And he's not on his shooting upwards. His level is shooting down. So that's why, pay him big money to have basically his production go like that. That's my only argument. I mean, I loved him in his heyday.
Absolutely.
Just don't think it's his heyday. And Bill Belichick obviously loved him in his heyday and still loves him.
Yeah.
But again, if I'm the GM, if I'm bringing in talent,
listen up, Bill.
I want the talent to have, upside going this way, not going that way.
I'm sold. Jeudy or bust.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I mean, just since we're talking about cheaper options, and you broke my heart with the Tee Higgins thing, but it's okay. I'll recover after the show.
Oh, I would move I'd move mountains for him.
I know. Right. You and I both. You and I both. But
Bill would given me that job to do that. So
right, exactly. I think.
Sorry, right. I just want to say for the record. So I put out a poll 2-3 weeks ago. If DeAndre Hopkins is unavailable, which wide receiver should the Patriots target this offseason? I listed Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy, Tee Higgins, Keenan Allen. 54% Tee Higgins, followed by Mike Evans.
Sure.
I mean, with that, you can't put those people in a poll. I did. Keenan Allen's always hurt. Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is consistent. He'd be great.
He has been consistent. But one player that Bill loves didn't want to pay anymore, retired again. And I read your article and felt like you believe that this is it for the last time. He's not going to do a Favre and come back again. One of the lines that you had in that article was that he showed flashes of greatness, but he wasn't consistently great anymore. Do you think that was a byproduct of his talent or the talent around him?
Both. Because I think, the offensive line was a big problem. And Tom at age 45 just doesn't want to be hit, period. And he just kind of went down or just threw the ball. He just didn't want to deal with a pass rush. So, but again, that's part and parcel of having guys down his throat every drop back. So I think that was part of the problem. And again, there was just so many injuries to his guys, and he didn't have Gronk anymore, and he just didn't have his guys, to go to. And I think it was frustrating for him. But again, in terms of dealing with a pass rush, I think that's where being 45 really showed. I mean, he can still throw the ball. He can still hit people, and he can still hit people in the clutch, as evidenced by the 4 comeback wins that they pulled out of their butt. He pulled out of everyone's butt. But when you're struggling like that to beat the teams that he had to make these comebacks against, I mean, it's like he had to move mountains to beat the Falcons, or, you know what I'm saying? Or the Saints, or, these teams who just really weren't that good.
Is he done? And did he sniff around to other teams?
Well, my connection, I have a few connections with Brady's, and my connections pretty much conveyed to me that it's the right time, or he thinks it's the right time. They all think it's the right time, and that's what it is. I think it goes beyond him not wanting to, in his words, suck on his way out, or get to a level where well, let's face it, when you watch Peyton Manning his final year, it was like so hard. He could not throw the ball. He won a Super Bowl, but he could not throw the ball. I mean, it was painful to watch how badly he could, his arm was gone.
Defense still wins championships, Karen.
Well, in that case, and I'm sure it's like Brady didn't want to be in that conversation. You want to go out with some dignity. He hit his magic threshold, 45. That's the age he said he was going to get to and show everybody that he could still play, and he did that. But I also think several other things. Family concerns. He split with Giselle. 2 of his kids are in Miami with her. His oldest son, who's I believe 16, is in New York and playing football. Okay? So the best team for him would have been maybe in terms of what's in place. And I'm not talking about the offense or the head coach. It was San Francisco. But boy, is that kind of far away. The second place would be Las Vegas, because he could walk in there and not have to learn another offense. It was his offense. But how close is Las Vegas? They certainly had enough on the offensive side of the ball, but not even close on the defensive side of the ball. But again, he's out in Vegas. Miami would be great, but Miami is sending out signals that they didn't want him. So what's left? The Jets? The Jets are definitely looking for a quarterback. Yeah. So when you put the options together, and again, if Brady was going to play another year or 2, he doesn't want to be in a situation like he was with Tampa, where they had no chance to win. Yeah, they're going to win a division at 8-9, but they had 0 chance beyond that. He needs to go to a team where there is a chance, and they have an offensive line that can protect him and enough weapons that he can go to. There aren't many teams that qualify for all the criteria. I mean, in the old days, it wouldn't matter because Brady was so good when he was younger. He would elevate everyone around him, and it didn't matter if he had, pedestrian receivers or pedestrian anything. He was good enough to win in spite of what was around him. But once he got up in age, got up around 40, it was harder for him to not only elevate the people around him, but to win in spite of them. So when you're that age, you need the circumstances to be just right. And I don't think there was a circumstance out there.
What do you think his time with Fox is going to be like? You think he's going to be good on the air?
My initial thought is that he might be too nice.
Yep, mine too.
I was talking actually to someone who's really good at that, Rodney Harrison, because he's, I don't know if it's going to say not nice, but he's not afraid to be critical, of his peers and old friends and whatever. He's going to call it like it is. And Rodney told me today, it's like, well, I'm going to go coach him up, trying to. But again, if it's not in your nature, I mean, it's kind of funny to say that is Brady would rip people on the sideline, but his public persona, in terms of, you put a microphone in front of him, he'll be able to decipher the defense and have that room of quality where he could probably call the plays ahead of time. But can he be critical, or can he really be honest about what he's seeing and put some people in harm, in a critical way, go after people for like falling down on the job.
Yeah, and that's what some other Boston personalities have said. He's gotta not be afraid to be Troy Aikman or Chris Collinsworth, because Troy Aikman wouldn't be able to walk down Main Street, Philadelphia, because he'd get ripped apart for
Right.
one, being a Cowboy, and two, how he speaks about the Eagles, and that's just what his job is. So will Tom be able to do that? I'm with you. Like I think he's going to be too nice, but I think the way he was with his players on the sideline, I think that might be a quality that will come in handy. It'll be interesting to hear some of his stories and kind of hear some of his side of things. I think that'll be the fun stuff, because we hear that from Romo, which we've mentioned Romo twice now, and he's clearly declining. I don't know what's going on with him.
Annoying.
But well, apparently, so I read today, apparently somebody was trying to have an intervention with him so they could figure out why he was declining. I don't know. We're not talking about Tony Romo. Bobby's not here. But I think Tom will be all right. I can't wait to hear some of the stories. But somebody mentioned today too, like, he's going to be calling games for guys whose dads he played with, which is just wild to me.
It is. How about somebody kind of semi-pitched this on another show I was on, and it was a show you guys are the best, but it was some other. No.
As long as they don't get an apple pie before us.
No, never. But I kind of fascinated with the idea if Fox was smart, as opposed, maybe have a few run throughs with him as an analyst, and again, if he's shooting, couldn't you see him, okay, with Edelman, Amendola, Gronk, doing kind of a Manning Brothers thing?
I love the Manning Brothers.
Yes.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So it's like Brady and Friends and his guys.
The Brady Bunch.
And again, the Brady Bunch. And and do basically watch the games and just sort of shoot the breeze while the game's going on. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I thought that would be better.
I think that would be dope. I'd even talk about Randy Moss. I think him and Randy are really close too. I know they ain't.
Yes. Yeah.
I think him and Randy. He talks about Randy being the smartest receiver he ever played with. So yeah, I think that would be phenomenal.
Would you guys tune in to that?
Oh, without
yeah.
I like watching the Manning Brothers thing, because I loved when Brett Maher missed that fourth extra point, and Peyton went nuts, and it was cool to see. It was like it was a flashback to his playing days. It was like, yeah, that would be cool to watch, because those guys are so close. They're fun, and they have all different personalities. As Edelman said, Randy Moss is one of the most country guys he's ever met. And you got Brady, and then you got the goofiness of Gronk and the skater boy persona of Amendola, and yeah, that would be awesome. That would be outstanding.
See, aren't we smart?
As long as he's not pushing his $100 or cacao ice cream on me, I'm fine.
Right.
Well, like I said, maybe I'm sure people are going to tune in for his first 2 games just to see, is he going to be good, bad, fall on his face, whatever. But I don't know. I think this idea would make them a mint.
Make them a lot of money, and they're going to make a lot of money off of it anyway, because like you said, people are going to tune in, and a lot of people are going to want him to fail. And that's another thing on his side too, is he's always played that underdog role, but he's always succeeded. So will he be able to take that criticism? That's going to be a big thing too.
Right. But that mentality doesn't change. The one he had, he's going to have that chip on his shoulder, and he's going to be out there to prove that he can be good as an announcer or an analyst or whatever they have him doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe he becomes a new day Don. Who knows? But
it's bar none. Like, Brady is the most competitive athlete I've ever been around. And when he first took over that year, that Bledsoe got hurt, and my paper sent me out to San Mateo, where he grew up. And I was trying to get I was going to write this, back home with, Tom Brady and family. And, I talked with his father and his mother and I went to his high school and his grade school. And I talked to people on the street he grew up. And the common bond was they all talked about his competitiveness. When he was a kid, when he was like 7, 8, 9, he'd go over a friend's house and they would be playing a board game. And if he didn't win, it would drive him crazy. And he would exactly. And I was told that he wouldn't leave until he had won. So at a young age, he was that competitive. So, and the thing is, he never lost it. He hates to lose at anything. It's not just football. So if it means TV critics, that'll be another competition for him.
Awesome.
He's also the last active Montreal Expo to retire from professional sports. There's something that can go in the Hall of Fame.
So yeah, I had two things. I know we're last hour mark, but so cause it got lost in the shuffle when we were talking about players. So there's two guys because we talk about cheap options, right? So I thought about Zay Flowers from Boston College, and then there's a tight end, Michael Meyers from not the one Halloween, but Michael Meyers from Notre Dame. I think is a really good option to be 6'4", 260, kind of below Henry. He's not stiff, so I think he's someone that could be a third tight end or second one if they end up moving on from John Smith. And then lastly, I had a hypothetical question because I love hypotheticals. So we talked briefly about Sean Payne. So he moved obviously via trade from New Orleans. If we were to trade Bill, what do you think we could get for him?
You think he's going to trade himself?
No, I'm for one.
At least a first round pick. I mean, Kraft gave up a first round pick. Hey, the guys won 6 Super Bowls. It should be 2 first round picks. How's that?
Yeah, I say 3. Give it 3. I'm 3 first round.
And 70 years old, 3 first round picks, right? Come
Yeah,
on.
they sucker.
There's some really dumb owners out there, though.
Sure.
Yeah, but they can all count. 70's high.
Jim Irsay. Hey, man.
Yeah, give us Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. Just.
But think about it though. Remember when Bill Parcells came here, and it was, I mean, there was hope, but a lot of people kind of just watch him on the sideline or kind of watch him go about being the head coach. And it would be the same for Bill Belichick going somewhere again, because he has the cachet, he has the rings, he has reputation, blah, blah, blah. I think even early on, people would be amused by his surliness, because fans here were amused by it until they started losing. So yeah, I mean, they would bank off it. Whoever the team is would bank off that initially.
Right.
But then if they started losing, of course, it would all turn.
Yeah. So I have my one last question. It's probably the biggest hypothetical you'll answer here, but you pretty much nailed the Patriots record this year, and almost had it down like game by game, which was very impressive. I think Vegas should hire you for odds. Way too early predictions as the team is currently constituted. If everything was just to fall in place as it is this team better in 2023 than they were in 2022? The same or worse?
I think the coach on offense makes them better. I really do. Because Mac Jones, it's going to be a breath of fresh air. They're going to be able to turn the page. I think the players on offense are going to feel like liberated. And
hopefully Kendrick Bourne.
And what when you look at it, what held them back this year? It was the offense. It wasn't the defense.
Nope.
The defense did have its moments against some quarterbacks, but for the most part, the defense held serve. And the defense was almost better than most of us thought, after losing J.C. Jackson and so on and so forth. They held they held their own. It's the offense that basically failed them this year. But there are obviously reasons for that.
Sure.
So now if you get the offense to at least be competent, have an offense that you would say, oh, they have no chance of scoring more than 20 points. This offense, again, if Bill O'Brien gets them right, they will be capable of scoring maybe closer to 30 points.
Right.
What was their record? I mean, it was something ridiculous. If an opponent scored over 20 points, they were like 0-18 or something ridiculous like that.
Mac has not won a game in the NFL when the opponent scored more than 25 points.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
you don't win Minnesota game, but that's another conversation for another day. But it's okay.
right,
Kirk
but
Cousins elite.
you would hope that putting in again, it's probably going to seem like 9-day to them. An actual coach over two guys who didn't know how to coach offense, and actually install, something that works, and not just have it be so simple and so obvious to defend. How can that not be better?
Mhm.
So,
I mean, boy, if it isn't, wow.
so with that, I want to dive into that now. Let Mike grab us. Since Bill O'Brien's back, he was the architect of the 11 personnel of Gronk and Hernandez. Well,
Yes.
you got two good tight ends still.
Well, hey, if he can somehow resurrect John Smith, I think we should do this.
Yeah.
Facts.
Really. But
Facts.
But here's the other problem, though. I mean, Hunter Henry statistically had a worse year, but part of that worse year was the fact that their offensive line was so bad that they had to keep him in to block.
Right.
So, okay, fix the offensive line. Get a good offensive line coach. Then that will allow Bill O'Brien to fully utilize what he has, because Hunter Henry was basically neutered, if you ask me. Really.
Yeah. Unless he ran those seam routes, then he was money.
Right.
Yep.
So, but again, when you have coaches who are just trying to survive and call things they're comfortable with and call it over and over, over the same play over and over and over again, you saw what the result was. I can't help but think that Bill O'Brien will get them on a better course this year.
And you talked about guys leaving, and now I'm just extending the show.
Purpose.
Devin McCourty and Matt Slater staying, retiring.
Well, right after the final game, I would say they're both gone or retiring. Gone is not the right word. Yeah, it seemed like they had said their goodbyes, and it seemed like the sense was they were both going to retire. But now you hear, Devin keeps saying he's not decided. And Matthew has been showing up at the stadium, according to Mike Reese, regularly. I don't know. How long is a locker clean out? If it's, I mean, so put it this way. I probably had them as 95 to 5% retired after the season. Now I would put it more like 80-20, 70-30.
I
would give it a little. I give it a little more chance that they would come back. Plus, when you look at, I'm sure Bill will be talking to both of them, and once again talking about their importance in the room. And, for Matthew Slater, does he want, the best special teams player of all time, does he want to leave after a season where they gave up 2, kickoff returns in the same game and half as many as the whole league? I don't know. Maybe he could be talked into coming back.
I think he liked playing with those guys, because that Brendan Schooler, man, he is outstanding.
Yeah.
But, there's word that he Matthew Slater, not Brendan Schooler, but Matthew Slater wants to go into seminary work. But he could also stick around as a coach. Like, he'd be better at coaching the special teams than Cam McCord.
Well, maybe maybe that's part of why he's there, been showing up. Again, I don't know. It would just be purely speculation and conjecture, on my part. I mean, I think even if he does retire, he will be around in some capacity, some
Should be
like,
good.
whether he's the chaplain or, I mean, who knows what. I think he means that much, both to, the coaching staff, but the players too, because they really respect him. McCourty, again, he's going to follow his brother's lead, I'm sure, or I'm guessing, and be on one of those talk show type things or an analyst for one of the, big networks. Because guess what? That's what he's been doing in his spare time. So the question is, does he want to jump and do that now, or does he have another year in him?
He has
Well-
lost a step, but we'll let Mike wrap it up.
Thanks, Joe. Karen,
Yeah.
thank you so much again for taking the time and joining us. I think the first half of the show, you were pushing me towards the ledge, and then you did what you always do. You brought me back.
Oh,
Can't wait.
Sure.
Hopefully, if you so choose to join us again, I would love to have you back for the draft to talk about why Bill picked that player and why Mike should actually watch the Patriots this year.
Mm.
It's going to happen.
okay.
But again, thank you so much. So for Joe Malgin, Ray Sean Buchanan, Craig Dulles, I'm doing our special guest, Karen Guregian. This is Michael Marcangelo saying thank you for listening to the 617 podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.